This is the She Dares to Travel podcast, and I'm your host, Raquella Pollock. After spending a decade managing the #1 travel agency in Canada and now working with tourism businesses in risk management, I am here to connect you with women who are taking the travel industry by storm, as well as business professionals with a passion for travel, just like me. We are here to inspire, motivate, and uplift you to not only follow, but plan out your dreams, no matter where in the world they may be. Be sure to leave a review, subscribe, and follow along.
Welcome back to the She Dares to Travel podcast. It is another episode full of inspiration, full of women empowerment, and I'm so excited to be speaking to Liv Fuller today, who is a former Naval Aviator and a current pilot in Hawaii. We are going to talk all about aviation, from her early days building and flying home-built airplanes with her grandfather to earning her wings of gold in the U.S. Navy. Liv's path has been one of relentlessness, determination, and just awe-inspiring achievement. She's pursued her aviation dreams through an aviation scholarship at Liberty University, mastered multiple aircraft ratings, and served as both a flight instructor and an aircraft mechanic. And then transitioning into the Navy, Liv trained extensively in Pensacola and Corpus Christi. She swiftly earned her wings and pilot her gold. Was it your gold wings that you earned? Wings of gold.
Yeah, we call it the Wings of Gold.
Wings of Gold, we will talk more about, and piloting the ET-3 aircraft. So inspiring. Her career not only fulfilled a childhood passion of hers, of course, but it ignited her love of travel and exploration and introduced her to so many different cultures and landscapes. And right now, Liv, you're here joining us here from Hawaii. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you having me on the show, Raquella, and I am excited to be here and share my story. I just want to give a quick disclaimer that the views expressed are my own, and they don't reflect the official policy or position of the Department of the Navy, of Defense, or the U.S. government. So I wanted to get that out there.
Thank you. Appreciate that. With your time in Hawaii, have you always been living there?
No, I have not. I grew up in a little town called Frederick, Maryland, just south of where Camp David is. And after I joined the Navy, you could imagine, they took me all across the country and the world. So I've lived in places like Pensacola, Florida, Corpus Christi, Texas, Jacksonville, Florida, Whidbey Island, Washington, Okinawa, Japan, and then Hawaii. So that's where I've landed.
Unreal. And how did you decide you wanted to join the Navy in the first place?
Well, I always had that passion on my heart ever since I was a little girl. And the only capacity that I really knew how to serve my country was as a pilot after I graduated college. I didn't know how I was going to do it, so I kind of figured it out as I went along through college. There's different options that people can take. You can go to the academy, you could do ROTC in college. But I didn't quite figure it out until after I graduated, and I did the 12-week officer course, Officer Candidate School in Newport, Rhode Island. So that's where it all started.
Unreal. And I know, of course, I said a little bit about, building aircrafts with your grandfather. Was he a really big influence in you wanting to become a pilot and ultimately go into the Navy?
Oh, yeah. He was a huge influence. He was a Delta captain, and he was not only that, he was an avid general aviation pilot. And I mean, he had, my grandmother tells me stories about airplane parts that he had under their bedroom bed, where he was building an airplane and then he built the hangar at their property and then he moved it over there. So that tells you something about his background, his passion for it. So I grew up, he's built 3 different airplanes in his lifetime, and I grew up helping him build them. So that was really special.
That is so special. And those memories, is he still around today, or was he when you got into the Navy?
He was when I was into the Navy, or went into the Navy, but he passed away about 3 years ago, this September.
Yeah, I'm sure he was so proud though to see you, follow your passion and your dreams, head into the Navy.
Every time I came back home on my leave or breaks in college, and he was surprised by the next rating that I got. And he was getting kind of jealous too, I could tell. It's like, I didn't get that. Is he playing rating? Or I didn't do it that bad.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. he was living vicariously through you then,
He was.
definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unreal. So speak a bit more to becoming a naval aviator. How did that, or how does that process work, and how did it work for you? Did you have to get all of your, pilot license beforehand? Did you train when you were there?
Sure. So to be a pilot in the Navy, you need to have a 4-year degree. And this could be in underwater basket weaving. It could be in anything. So depending on the time, because there's what we call an ebb and flow in the pilot shortage. You hear that on the news, pilot hiring. So it ebbs and flows. And during the time I went in, it was on the lower side. So they didn't really need pilots. So I had gotten my ratings in college, my flight ratings, and I worked all the way up through my certified flight instructor rating. And I believe that was pivotal in me obtaining a pilot slot because of the demand was very low. So I had to really stand out and shine to be picked for a slot. So that's how I went about that. I was in between the Air Force and the Navy, but their training pipeline timing was very different. The Air Force was about 1.5 years wait. Navy was a little shorter. So I had a couple letters of recommendation. I took all the tests, the medical tests, and submit the resume. It's a whole package you submit. I heard back in 2 weeks, and they picked me up, and I was shipped out in 2 months. It would have been earlier, but I picked a little bit later of a date. So that goes to tell you, having an aviation background beforehand really does help because they look at the whole package of a person. Not to say that you couldn't get in with, a psychology degree or a medical. I know several people in my classes that had those kind of backgrounds, but it definitely helped.
Wow. With that knowledge and experience you had or getting there, what do you think was your most challenging part? Was it the learning prior to, or once you actually were there in the Navy?
You mean the biggest challenge I had when I was in the Navy or getting there?
Both. Was one more of a struggle than the other? Did one help the other? Or, the knowledge you had before help? Or yeah, what was the hardest part? I can imagine there was a lot.
The hardest part was actually making the phone call to the recruiter because
Really? Oh,
yeah,
wow.
because it makes, impressions, first impressions are everything. And I had a lieutenant commander who had actually helped me come up with my elevator speech, so to speak, and my pitch. And I was routed to, I would say he was the best recruiter on the East Coast. He was wonderful. He got me exactly what I needed. And that was the hardest part for me. But going through the training, like there's so many challenges that you face. Like I wouldn't even know where to start. Like the dynamics of being a female in such a male dominated career path, all the different personalities that you have to deal with, the academics, how tough they are, the survival training, how you have to push yourself physically. But I'd say the most challenging thing for me was being a right-brained person in a left-brained world, if you know what I'm saying. Like, because I'm creative, so I come from a family who plays music, and we paint, we do artwork. So I have this creative mind. So it was extra hard for me to understand concepts like systems knowledge and math, mental math. But so I say I have to study a little bit more than the average person or pilot in training. But I knew my weakness with that, and I came up with creative ways to understand and memorize the information. Like I wrote a song about all the different tools that an aircraft mechanic uses. And I had to draw it on the whiteboard, our course rules for training, this altitude at this spot, at this airspeed. And then I'd have to walk around in my kitchen and chair fly it. So
Oh,
that was the hardest part for me. I don't know if anybody else out there could relate to that, but that just goes to show you that if I could do it, anybody could do
yeah.
it.
Smart
Oh my,
way to learn, right? It's funny. I remember in school, I mean, it wasn't Naval Academy or anything, but in school, I remember my mom when I was younger, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to memorize this. And she's like, make a song about it or do a poem or something that you can remember because we're all very creative too. So I definitely can relate to understanding that. But it's smart. And that goes to show that, follow your passion, but also know what you're good at. and
Right.
continue to stay true to who you are while you're doing it. So it's not going to become a job and it can still be some sort of passion that you have. Interesting, very interesting. And can you explain a bit more about the Wings of Gold? I'm so curious what that means, how you earn it, and especially to earn it in under a year as well.
Sure. Honestly didn't even know that I had done it in under a year until at my winging. And they gave me what we call like a soft recognition for
Yeah.
an achievement. But the process to becoming a naval aviator, everybody goes through the same funnel, so to speak. So you become an officer, whether that's through the academy or ROTC or the program that I did called OCS, Officer Candidate School. And then you go to Pensacola, Florida. And if you don't have at least your private pilot license, you have to train with a local flight school up to solo. So you solo an airplane, and then you go right into the academics. So you have to learn about weather theory, systems, regulations, the Navy way of flying. And it's in a classroom environment that, forgetting how long it took, but I think it was somewhere 6 to 8 weeks, somewhere in there. So you started a class on a Monday and you took the test on a Friday. So it was
Wow.
very quick.
Ooh.
A lot of people would wash out there if it wasn't for medical reasons or they just didn't think it was for them. So people would drop like flies. So you had to like really know you wanted to do this and give it your everything. You had to put your head down and just grind. So once you get past that, then they would send you to your primary training squadron. So that was either you'd stay in Pensacola or you would go to Corpus Christi, Texas. So I went to Texas and I trained in the T6B Texan, and that's a turboprop trainer. I believe the Air Force uses those as well. So I got to bypass the flight school part in Pensacola because came in as a flight instructor, right? So that went by really quick. I was only in Pensacola for about 2 months, as opposed to the 6 to 8 months that people will spend there. So I went right to Texas, started the syllabus for the T6 for primary. And since I had at least my private license, again, they gave me the option to opt out of some flights. So I did. So that went by pretty quick. And I was able to select my first choice for maritime, the maritime platform. So you can choose either rotary, you can go jets, or you could do the heavies, or maritime, as the Navy likes to call them. So they had two options for that, the P8 Poseidon or the P3 Orion. So after I completed my advanced flight training in the T-44 Pegasus, then I went on to picking the P3 Orion because they only had 2 slots for the entire year for my class. So my flight partner and I talked about it, and we grabbed those 2 slots, went off to the Fleet Replacement Squadron in Jacksonville, Florida, where we learned to actually fly the P3. And after that took about 6 months, 5 to 6 months. Then we went over to our fleet squadron, and you stay at your fleet squadron for 3 years. We call it your first tour or your sea tour. And then you have a land tour after that. And most people will go on to being an instructor in the Navy, or they could stay at the squadron, or they could switch their job completely, so that you have the option. But that, in a nutshell, is the steps.
To be a part of. And what age are you starting this, or do most people start this?
Sure. So we had people in my class that were about 26 to 28 years old, and they were considered the old people. So I, at the time, was 22 years old. And I, even now, like I'm 28 now. So if that was 6 years ago,
That's a
then
lot.
I think about all the PT that we did, and I pulled my back the other day putting on a sock. So I'm happy I did it. I don't know how those guys did it older,
Relatable.
but most people were younger 20s.
Yeah. Unreal. What was your motivation to go through? Like you said, people were dropping like flies for the 1 weeks where you'd be, study, 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 and then go, and then to keep pushing forward. What was your motivation to do so?
I have a really bad case of FOMO, a fear of missing out. And
Yeah.
if somebody would have told me before I went in the Navy that, hey, you could go to the airlines and make all this money, and have this really nice cushy job and bid for your schedule and get what you want, I would have still said no because I wanted to do the Navy and be a naval aviator. Because if I had the opportunity to do it and I didn't, then I would never live with myself. So my motivation was just to achieve that goal and serve my country. And even on the hard days when I feel like giving up, I would think of the adventure of life. Because when you wake up every day, you don't know who you're going to meet, what's going to happen. Every day is always different. So that's always my motivation. Even if I would have failed, it's still fun, a fun journey.
Yeah. I can imagine you met a lot of people that will be lifelong friends along the way as well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm getting married this fall, and I sent all my invites out, and I have a lot of people in the
Mhm.
Navy that they just made an impactful, they're
Yeah.
very impactful in my life. So I couldn't
Mhm.
marry without them there.
That's exciting. And congratulations on the upcoming
Yeah,
wedding. Very excited. Is he a pilot as well?
he is. Yeah, he flies for United.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very nice. It's so interesting, the pilot world. The more I learn about it, the more I realize how small it actually is, even though there's so many different facets of what you can do in the industry. And I love that you have your naval background and that you've moved into the commercial. Obviously, being a woman working in both is something where it is very limited. I know the stats are slowly moving in the right direction. I've talked about it with other pilots on this podcast as well. Just with the amount of either commercial airline pilots being female or pilots in general. And I'm curious, with your experience in the Navy, have you ever had moments where you felt that your gender was a hindrance to what you were doing?
There, besides the few experiences that I've had where it was more of a negative experience being a female, I'd say it was more of a a catalyst to my success because you have the spotlight on you because whether you want it or not, you're the only girl in the entire classroom or in most settings. So having that, it pushes you to strive to be more professional and to build your knowledge and your skill, because you want to make a good impression. People are looking at you and they know who you are. It's, like I said, whether you like it or not, it's just the way it is. So it really helped to push me and to motivate me to be better.
Beautiful. Have you ever spoken about or had that moment where there was that imposter syndrome moment where it's just thinking, am I supposed to be here? Or have you always been able to push past that feeling to just
Oh,
continue forward?
yeah. I mean, I've had the feeling definitely, but you just push past it. It's like a muscle. You learn to like just let go of that thought and just keep going.
Love that thought. It's true because I speak about that quite a bit with others, and it's always interesting hearing the perspective on it. And it's true that the consensus usually is just keep pushing forward. And I love that. It's a muscle, it's a reflex. As soon as it comes in, it's a, I got better things to do. I got to learn.
Right.
I got to do something. Yeah, exactly.
You think of people like Carrie Lorenz. She was the first fighter pilot or combat pilot in the 80s when they allowed women to fight combat, and think of the things she had to go through. If the pioneering women can do that, then we
Yeah,
can.
absolutely. And think of how much they've had to do to get us where we are today. And then the future, how much better it's going to be moving forward too. It's so exciting. So exciting. So, with the experience you have with the military service, how has that influenced or impacted your approach to working in commercial aviation?
Well, I definitely would say it gives you more of an edge because they not only does it give you veterans preference when it comes to companies hiring outside of the military,
Mhm.
it sets you apart. Not that you're anything special, but they know how the sausage is made, so to speak, with the training that you go through and the knowledge that you have to pilot these aircraft for these specific missions.
Mhm.
So they like that. Um, but you're still given an equal opportunity with everybody else with the whole package.
Mhm.
Um, so again, it boils down to personality, experience. So having that, I want to say it's kind of like a gold star. And when you sit
Yeah.
down in the cockpit with another person who's a captain that was in the military, you talk about your background a little bit. Oh, you're military. Okay, yeah. Like it's automatically like it's like a brother slash sisterhood because
Yeah.
you know what you've been through. So that helps to relate to each other. But as far as the hiring process goes, and bleeding into the commercial world now from the military, it's definitely gives you an edge.
Absolutely. I can imagine.
Thank you to Hotel Z Kelowna, Victoria, and Tofino for being our sponsor. You can also save 15% off your next getaway using the code DARES2, DARES 2, the number 2, at hotelz.com. These funky and unique hotels are in British Columbia, and they're going to have you not wanting to leave while you're on your next vacation. Enjoy.
Has there been any standout memorable moments, whether it's a flight or a mission that you've been on in your career?
Yes. And this one was not actually in the Navy, but it was in a P-51 Mustang, if you're familiar with it. Was the fighter World War II. And I served as the navigator for a pilot of a privately owned Mustang. And he had never been to this little airport where this D-Day event was happening in Virginia. So I sat in the back and flew with him down there and said, okay, here's that pond. The flag is pointed this way because the wind is coming this way, because I knew it like the back of my hand. So, land on this runway. So I helped him down. We landed. And when I was getting out of the airplane, there was an older gentleman in his uniform, and he helped me off the wing. I slid off the wing right into his arms. And somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, "That's Jerry Yellen." And he was the last pilot to fly a combat mission in the Mustang in World War II.
Wow.
And he caught me. It was
Um,
just a real moment. And I got to
yeah.
share a few things with him and chat. So that was really neat. That was awesome.
Mm,
And he passed away, I think, a couple years ago.
wow.
So that was memorable.
Yeah. That is an incredible story, and what an incredible memory. Holy. It's unbelievable. And these are all the things that we don't think of, and especially when it comes to the Navy or military in general, and just everything that everybody goes through. And it's so much effort. And I understand what you mean with the whole like badge of honor, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, because it's very admirable what everybody does to serve, and the training that goes behind it is so true. Speaking about that aircraft, I know you had mentioned the EP3. Can you explain what that aircraft is all about and kind of how it compares to other ones that you've piloted?
Sure. I'll tell you what I can tell you, but it's considered the spy plane of the Navy. So,
Ooh, okay.
but it's old. It's very old. It was first used in the Navy in 1962.
Wow.
So it was originally used as anti-submarine warfare mission set. So the EP3 is the electronic version of the P3. So it's outfitted with cutting edge sensors and thermal sensitive cameras, all that, the bells and whistles. So they considered an all-terrain hunter. So you can use it over the water, over the land. It's been used in many conflicts and battles throughout our American history since the 60s. So it's very versatile. But flying that airplane was a handful because we didn't have autopilot.
Oh,
We didn't have modern flight deck with the computers and all the software. We had a flight engineer who sat between the pilots. So we'd set the power and then he'd fine tune it for us. Whereas in airplanes today, you set it and then the computer does that.
okay.
Just an example. But the Navy would put their money towards other things, not our autopilot, not to fix
Yeah.
it. So it was very hands-on, a handful.
Wow.
It made you more of a stick and rudder pilot.
Mhm.
Today, you
Well,
don't really.
I bet they figured it was cheaper just to train you how to fly it than to upgrade it or fix it.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, so interesting. I recently was in Port Alberni on Vancouver Island here in Canada, and they have the Martin Mars water bombers. and they have two of them. Are you familiar with those aircrafts?
No, I'm not.
No, they
Not
were
sure
really
there's of
popular.
those, but I'd have to look
Yeah,
them up.
they're amphibious, and so they're really unique and interesting. They're really really old, but I got to go do a tour through them. I'm heading to the States actually, to go to a museum, I believe. I think it's the States.
Okay.
Anyways, but I think I know I can visualize the controllers you're talking about because it was just all of these amounts of buttons and everything that the guy would just sit there and be like, "Yeah, this is how I control this and this and this and this." So
Yeah, it's
different.
overwhelming when you look at it, but we have to learn what every button does, what every switch does.
Uh-huh.
How to fix it if it goes wrong.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
unreal. That's so interesting. Very interesting. How would you say aviation, I mean, from a young age into where you are now, has really expanded your perspective of, the world?
Well, growing up, I was a very shy child. I was afraid people would say hello to me and never wanted to go anywhere. Complete opposite of who I am today. And with the challenge of becoming a pilot, it forced me because you have character building that is inevitable when you're faced with all the challenges and the tests and responsibility of piloting an aircraft and the safety of your passengers. So it really forced me to come out of my shell and expand my horizons, be somebody who's personable. And that got me a long way. I mean, I was handpicked for a scholarship to go to college and, got me the slot in the Navy. So my perspective of the world changed in that it's not a scary place. I used to think it was, but after it got a lot smaller, being a pilot, I realized that it's your oyster.
It's unbelievable. I feel travel does that, but I can imagine it's a different experience when you're in the cockpit. So it's even more expanding to see it from that bird's eye view.
Well, when
Beautiful.
you work, you're traveling. So you do
Exactly.
both. Great.
You found the secret sauce. You found the secret sauce to that one.
Yes, I did.
Well, in regards to advice that you have received, or even your own advice that you want to give to aspiring pilots, especially women that are looking to enter this field and maybe didn't think it was something they could do, what advice do you have for them?
I would say to run at the door of opportunity with 110% because when something opens up, it might not be for very long. For example, I would have never gotten my aircraft mechanic certification if I didn't run for that when I had a couple weeks of downtime in between my Navy training. It was only a few weeks, but I hunkered down and I did the tests and I took the test. It was a 9-hour test. It was long. And it's come in handy with owning an airplane. It's cheaper maintenance because you're doing it. You're signing it off. And then it helps you understand the systems behind troubleshooting in a professional flying job. So anyway, that's just an example of, just going at 110% at something, even though you think you might not be able to just try for it anyway. And then number two, I always tell people to be personable and friendly and don't burn bridges because this is an example in the Navy. You get what's called the gouge, which is essentially passing on your knowledge, experiences, and details about the syllabus and instructors and your flights to others. And people who would just keep it to themselves because it was a competition, like you're competing for the best scores for your class that week. So, people would want to keep it to themselves and so they can get the jet slot. So those people, nobody liked them. And that would factor into the overall persona of someone. And you don't want to fly with them. But the people who went out of their way and shared their experiences, passed on the knowledge, and you train with each other, you go to the simulator. Hey, I just did this flight. You have it tomorrow. I'll show you what I did and what I learned, what not to do. Then, those are the people that everybody loves. And that gets you a long way because people recognize it. People see it.
Mhm.
So in
Definitely.
the industry that's so small, like you were saying, you realized, and you're not even in it per se,
Mhm.
you realize that it is small. So don't burn the
Mm.
bridges. Be nice
Great
and
advice.
help people.
Great advice. Have you found there has been any really special moments up in the cockpit or anything memorable as you were flying, something you saw, or maybe on the flip side, something that was really scary that you overcame?
Yeah, I actually was in an airplane that had a complete electrical failure, and
Wow.
it was a little two-seater airplane. And the person in the back, he was an instructor, but I was the mechanic, and I worked on the airplane too.
Okay.
So there was a lot of pressure there, and there was a storm coming, and we were in the pattern around the airport that we just took off from, and this particular airplane had a retractable gear. So
Mhm.
with that electrical power, you have to do an emergency extension. So I had to find the handle, pump it down. So we got the gear down. That was great. But then the storm was approaching, so we didn't want to land in the face of a storm. Every pilot knows that. So we had to divert somewhere else. We couldn't hear each other. We were shouting to each other. It was noisy. We didn't have any communication ability because our radio was down. So the towered airport that we were diverting to had to give me the light gun signals and the whole bit. So it was a stressful flight. Everything was how I had to make a lot of decisions in a small amount of time. So we got the airplane on the ground. We were safe. But that was probably the most stressful flight I've ever had.
Unreal. What was the time span from when the electrical went down to when you landed? Probably felt like a year, but
It did, but it was actually really short. I think it was within a half hour.
wow, unreal. I can see how the mechanic aspect would come in so handy in that situation. Like, is there a lot that you can gather from being in that moment from everything around you, or would you actually need to find out by going, within the hull? How would you kind of process what was going on and if it could be fixed with your surroundings?
Well, every pilot is taught in an emergency situation, you're going to aviate first, navigate second, and then communicate third. So you focus on flying the airplane because as soon as you get distracted, you could be pitching down or to the right, or like you could get yourself into unusual attitude and lose control. So you focus on flying the plane first. That's what I did. And then navigating. So I was over the airfield. Okay, good. I know where I am. I'm going to stay here for now, and then communicate. So then we started chatting back and forth and trying a couple of different switches. I had him look at the battery because it was behind his seat, check the connections, take those steps until we determine, hey, we're not going to get this thing back online. We just have to
Mhm.
land.
And coming into the airport, how did they know that you were without power? You said it was light signals that they were doing for you. And then how would you communicate to them?
Sure. So there, we call this the license plate in the sky. It's called a transponder.
Okay.
It's a little radio transceiver, and there's a code you put in there. And the code for an emergency with no communications is 7600. So that's what I had put in, and they could see that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow. Interesting. Unreal. I'm glad you guys were both okay because that would have been heart palpitating 30 minutes. That's for sure. That's for sure. Wow.
One of the cases where we were in the sky wishing we were on the ground. That's
Mhm.
what every pilot says. That they would, vice
Yeah.
versa is okay if you're on the ground wishing you're in the sky, but you never want to be in the air wishing you're on the ground.
Wishing it on. No, definitely not. Oh man. Or is there any place or destination that you really want that's top of the list that you want to fly into, or an airport that you want to see, or destination?
Yeah, I've gotten to check a lot of them off my list, but there's one I haven't done, ironically, because I grew up in Maryland. But there's something called the Hudson River Corridor, where you can fly by visual flight rules over the river and by the Statue of Liberty, 1,000 feet, and it's very scenic. And in my opinion, the best way to see New York City. But I haven't done that yet, so I really want to do that. And then also, I would love to fly over the Grand Canyon.
Mm.
And I have a mission, a personal mission to take my tour guide. When I was last in the Grand Canyon on a mule ride, my tour guide, he had never been in an airplane. And I said, if I bring an airplane down here and take you up, would you take me on a mule ride wherever I wanted to go in the Grand Canyon? And he said yes. So that's a plan. We're going to do that wherever I want to go.
I think it's a great trade-off. A mule for an airplane ride. Great.
Yeah, it's great because he grew up there. He knows the Grand Canyon like the back of his hand. And, I think it would be a neat perspective.
Great perspective. That is so fun. I love it. Would you say that there's been anything that's just been your most rewarding aspect of your career in aviation?
Yes. And it is the ability, the many opportunities and the ability to give back, because it's been, I'd say, about 10 years now since I first started flying in college up until now. And since then, I've served as a co-founder, a staff member, leader, mentor for many nonprofit organizations like the Women Can Fly event with the Department of Virginia Aviation, Pre-Flight Aviation Camp, Pilot for a Day, and I work for the Pearl Harbor Aviation Museum for their Pathways program. And then I recently just got back from the world's largest air show in Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Did you see the pink jet?
Yes, I did. Stephanie. Yep.
Yes.
I chatted with her for a little bit.
Yes, that's amazing. I just stumbled upon it on Instagram and I saw the aviation event in Oshkosh and I'm like, what is
Okay.
this?
Yeah.
That's unreal. Cool.
I was actually going to send you a couple different people that I think would be neat to interview. She was one of them, but I was a mentor for a camp called Girl Venture, and I attended the camp 10 years ago, and it really gave me a great start to my aviation career. So I had my high schoolers with me, and we went and sat in her jet and talked to her and took pictures. But it's very rewarding to do that because you see their eyes get big when you talk about it and your experiences and share how the roadmap of how they can do it too. Because when I was that age, I had no idea where to start. So to help them achieve the same goals. So that's my favorite part.
I love that. And you're right, it's the giving back and it's the talking about it. It's letting little girls know that it is a possibility. And that's been a lot of a consensus for a lot of women that I've spoken to in aviation. It's just a lot of people don't know unless they grow up with it. They have somebody in their family that's in aviation. So it's having that conversation to be like, yeah, you want to do that? Sure. Go for it. And then there's multiple aspects. If you don't want to be up in the air, you can work on them on the ground. You can work at an airport. There's so many different ways to get involved in this, which is unreal. Absolutely love it. I appreciate your time. I love hearing your story. I think it's so exciting and it is very inspiring what you've done, and all under the age of 30. Incredible, even though now you're considered old in naval terms. But
I know, it's ironic. So old.
So old, yes. Yes. Watch when you're putting that sock on. Take care.
I will. Stretches first.
Stretches first. You got it. Where can people follow along your journey?
Sure. So people can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Live to Fly, which is spelled LIVTO Fly. And then on YouTube at Live to Fly Aviation. So I do posts about my experience in aviation over the past decade and how I did it and how others can do it too.
Awesome. Thank you again for your time, your insight. Really appreciated. If you like this episode, please make sure to leave a review, subscribe, and we really, really hope to hear from you soon. And I will put all of Liv's information in the description. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you to this episode's sponsor, Kentucky Holidays. Let me tell you, I'm speaking from experience. I have traveled on these tours and I have seen the world in a group setting and made lifelong friends because of it. Check out the link in the episode description so you can find out their last minute deals, their promotions, and where they can take you around the world. You do not want to miss it and you will have no regrets. Happy travels. If you like this episode, please subscribe, download a few more, and leave a review. I really would love to hear from you, what you enjoyed and what your key takeaways were. And of course, please let me know if there's any aspect of the travel industry you want me to talk about next. You can also search for the hashtag She Dares to Travel Podcast on Instagram and comment on the episode's post with your questions. I'd love to answer them all for you guys. I hope you enjoy your day, stay so well, and until next time, fly straight.